What's going on, guys? Welcome in. Parzi Vasugian here with you for another episode of the Red Friday live chat. Yes, not only is it Red Friday, it is the eve of the first Chiefs preseason game. We're that excited for the preseason, man. Listen, in all seriousness, as I see a lot of you guys are starting to come in here. This has been a very interesting year for the Chiefs because you go back to back and you have the opportunity to do something you've never done before, which is three-peating, but a lot of work needed to be done this offseason, especially on the offensive side of the football. And the Chiefs went and addressed all of the problems they had on the offensive side of the ball. And now in less than 24 hours, less than 23 hours, we have an opportunity to see what that offense would look like. It's, you can't really put too much on, you can't really make a big deal about the preseason. If you have a highlight, yeah, sure, in the moment, I'm probably going to get excited just as much as you guys, but then, you kind of got to remember, okay, it's just a preseason. Remember last year when the Chiefs played the Saints in the first preseason game? Obviously, they didn't have Chris Jones, but if you recall, Derek Carr just chewed up that Chiefs defense. Obviously, Derek Carr did not have a good year, and the Chiefs defense had a phenomenal season. So, that's just kind of a reminder that you can't really, you can't put too much stock in these preseason games. I think what happens in these preseason games, and I've said this for so many years, what happens matters. It does matter because you have them for a reason. But the games don't count, obviously. Obviously, I think, what you see in the first half, mainly early on in the game, especially now, you don't see the typical dress rehearsal like we used to in the week 3 preseason games, back when they had 4 preseason games. You don't see starters a whole lot anymore in these preseason games. It's usually one drive, maybe 2, and that's it. They're done. So we're not going to get a whole lot. We'll still get a glimpse of the Chiefs and what they look like, but really a lot of times people just care about the first half of the game and what they look like, because you got your 22 starters out there and then the 22 backups and then a couple other guys that look like they're going to possibly make the team if they can contribute in these preseason games later in that first half or in the second half when they get a majority of their playing time. So that's kind of how I always approach every single preseason game. It's been a long time. We all miss football very much. So, it's okay to be excited, but then remember after the fact, it's just a preseason. It's just a preseason. I know, I don't know if the Ravens still have this streak, but I know they make such a big deal about how they've won like 20 some odd in a row preseason games. And it's like, who the hell cares? I don't know. I remember the Chiefs, they went 4-0 in the preseason, I think in 2016 or 2017. And the Chiefs PR team made a big deal about how, the only 2 times the Chiefs went 4-0, they went to the Super Bowl, 1966 and 1969. It's like, okay, I mean, could you get a more coincidental, irrelevant stat than that? I mean, it was just kind of weird how the Chiefs kind of bragged about that for a day and a half, but they did. They brought that up. They made that a thing. So I don't know. To me, I think only the first, obviously when the starters play, that's the biggest deal. You just want to see how the starters do. And after that, a lot of people do tune out. I'll be honest, if it was not for me doing this podcast and all this Chiefs content, I probably would check out by halftime and not really give a damn. There are some people who love this stuff and they consume all of it, even though they're not a member of the media or they don't do podcasting, blogs, or any of that stuff. And that's okay. Nothing wrong with that. Me personally, it's just, I don't really give a damn about, and any member of the media that pretends to pay very close attention, it's like, oh, okay, all right. Because even your readers don't care that much. Maybe they might care, and that's not meant to be any disrespect to the players on the field, but let's be honest. Who cares about the second half of these preseason games? How many people make a big deal about these things? Maybe it's a bit of a big deal if someone from your favorite college thrives and has a good preseason, especially if they also play for your favorite team. So let's say Iko Boydo who's a Kansas State guy, or Felix Anudike-Uzama. They go out there and shine and have a big game in the second half. Okay, it's going to be a big deal. The media is definitely going to write about that because there are a lot of Kansas State fans that would love to read about that kind of thing. By the way, for those of you who are here watching live on Facebook and YouTube, appreciate you guys. Comment below with your questions, whatever's on your mind. What are your thoughts? What do you want to see? That's my biggest question to you guys. What do you want to see in tomorrow's preseason game between the Chiefs and the Jaguars? What do you want to see from the Chiefs side of things? I don't think a lot of people care so much about the Chiefs defense. I think a lot of people know, like, okay, whatever happens with the defense in these preseason games, it just happens. I think a lot of people definitely want to keep an eye on that quarterback position with L'Jarius Sneed gone and see what's going to happen with Najee Johnson, Josh Williams, Jalen Watson. Those guys are definitely going to be some important pieces to keep an eye on for sure. But outside of that, I don't know if a lot of people really care so much about the defense. I think it's the offense that everybody is going to be paying very close attention to. So I'm very excited to see what the offense does in the games tomorrow and after that. Obviously next Saturday, and then following that is going to be a Thursday night game, and then we're going to be moving on to the real games, the regular season. So let me know what you guys have on your mind. If you guys have any questions, comments, what do you want to see from the Chiefs in these upcoming preseason games? While you guys are asking your questions in the comments or just commenting on whatever, and I'll read them shortly, I do want to address a couple of things here. One is the rumors involving CeeDee Lamb. So Jerry, I almost said Jerry Rice. What's his name? The owner of the Cowboys, Jerry Jones. He was talking to the media, and he said he has he's not in any hurry to get a deal done with CeeDee Lamb, the star wide receiver for the Cowboys. CeeDee Lamb then responds to that tweet of the reporter who said that and writes LOL. And I think a lot of people are kind of thinking that he's laughing at Jerry Jones for his comments. Meanwhile, Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb, listen, I don't pay attention to this stuff, but a lot of people who have time on their hands do. Both, I guess both Hollywood Brown and CeeDee Lamb, they put, they changed their Twitter banners where it's basically the two of them together while they were in college in Oklahoma. Obviously Hollywood Brown went to the University of Oklahoma, Boomer Sooner, and CeeDee Lamb did as well. So a lot of people are wondering, could we see a reunion in Kansas City? I don't know. I'm not banking on it. I saw FanDuel put out a trade proposal that the Chiefs get CeeDee Lamb and the Cowboys get Rashee Rice, a first-round pick and a second-round pick. There is no way in hell the Cowboys would make that move. Only because of the suspension looming over Rice. If there was a suspension looming, I would actually say that's a significant win for the Cowboys more than the Chiefs. I'm not saying I would ever say no to CeeDee Lamb, but I don't know if I would be willing to give up that much for a good wide receiver. Like, you already have a good wide receiver in Rice. Is he on the same level as CeeDee Lamb? Hell no, but I don't know. Listen, a lot of times when rumors are out there about wide receivers who are available, the Chiefs always become the team that people talk about because they talk about that wide receiver potentially working with Patrick Mahomes. And listen, if you give up that much for CeeDee Lamb, you actually have to sign him to a long-term deal. Otherwise, what are you doing? And the Chiefs right now are trying to figure out how to keep guys like Creed Humphrey and Trey Smith long-term. So I don't know. By the way, I see a lot more people are coming in here. Please comment below with your questions, comments, whatever you guys have, and I'll answer them, read them as we go along. Renee says preseason might help the rookies. Yes, and I think the rookies, this rookie class is very interesting because you have two defensive backs. One of them being Kamal Haddon, who is low on the depth chart with the safeties, and the cornerback position. So I'm very curious to see what Kamal Haddon can do when he gets an opportunity, because even though L'Jarius Sneed is gone, that cornerback room kind of is crowded. So, Shamari Connor's converted to corner. I know that's a guy that the Chiefs really, really like. So Iko Boydo, Kelvin Joseph, Keith Taylor, Nick Jones, Miles Battle, Kamal Haddon. I mean, those guys are fighting for the last spot, assuming there are no injuries, in my opinion. Jaden Hicks, a safety on the team that I know the Chiefs really like. They got in the 4th round. And then on the offensive side, you have 3 offensive linemen who you drafted this year. Obviously, we'll see Kingsley Suamataia with the starting offense. But then later on in the game, we'll see CJ Hansen, the interior offensive lineman, right now listed as a guard behind Trey Smith. You also have Hunter Norzad, who's listed behind Creed Humphrey, who the Chiefs got early in day 3 of the draft. So there are some very interesting names the Chiefs drafted this year, and guys that they're definitely going to keep an eye on in this game. Because here's the way I see it. I don't think a lot of these rookies you see right now, outside of Kingsley Suamataia and Xavier Worthy, I don't think a lot of them are going to be playing much as rookies. And I should mention Jared Wiley. He's the guy that a lot of people are very excited to see. But I think in the near future, especially when you go through some of these cap casualties in this upcoming offseason, I think guys like, Jared Wiley might end up playing more snaps in his second year than his first year. You might see more of Kamal Haddon and Jaden Hicks, especially if Justin Reed's not coming back. You might see more of Hunter Norzad and CJ Hansen in 2025 compared to 2024. Because Trey Smith, he's kind of up in the air if he's going to come back or not, especially with the guard market going up. And we talked about that a lot in last night's podcast. Steve, what's going on, man? I was on Steve's live stream earlier this calendar year, but it was for last season during the playoff run. Glad Reed is playing the starters in the first half. It's actually going to be just one drive. I don't think the Chiefs starters are going to be playing into the second quarter. I'd be very surprised. The history that we have seen with Patrick Mahomes, Travis Kelce and company is that they only play one drive, maybe 2 in another preseason game, but they're not really expected to play into the second series for the first game. Now, they can always mix it up and do their own thing, so we'll see. Teresa says, want to see how this new kickoff will go. Yeah, especially with the players who the Chiefs have. You have Xavier Worthy, who is super fast. You have Luis Rees-Summit, who's still making that transition, trying to make some progress in his transition to American football, and he's definitely got the ability to get involved in the kick return game, and maybe even on kickoffs too, given his background in rugby. So I'm very curious to see that as well. Justin Reed not expected to play in this game given the injury he's still working on, but if we get to see Justin Reed in the preseason, and we know that he's capable of doing kickoffs and whatnot, how much involvement will we see from him, and can he be good at that? So I'm very curious to see that as well, especially with the speed the Chiefs have at return. Nico Remigio is a guy that is listed as one of the top returners, so we'll see. Ruby says, I want to see the rookies and what they are possibly bringing to the team. Yeah, this is going to be a very important preseason for the rookies. I mean, obviously, Kingsley and Xavier, it's very important for them to do well because those are 2 guys that you're going to use a lot in the regular season this year. But then after the starters get pulled from the game, let's see what happens with those guys I mentioned, Hicks, Hayden, Hansen, Norzad, because those are guys, Wiley, that we're probably going to see a lot of in the future with this franchise. This draft class really does have the potential to contribute in a big manner similar to the 2022 draft class. Now, the difference is the 2022 draft class, those guys contributed right away. And if you guys recall what I said going into that season, I said, I don't know about this quarterback room. You have a lot of young guys. I think the oldest player at the quarterback position you had at the time was Rashad Fenton, and he's no longer on the team, obviously. So then after that, L'Jarius Sneed was your veteran guy, and everyone else was a rookie. And they did great, all things considered, too. So I'm very curious to see how this unit looks this preseason for sure. I'm excited for all of it to see often offense and defense, how they perform and how they look. Layla says. Chris says, what I don't want to see is Juju. I'm pretty happy with the current state of the wide receiver room. Yeah, so for those who missed it today, Juju Smith-Schuster did get cut by the New England Patriots. He signed a 3-year deal worth $33 million last offseason. He was supposed to be one of the guys to help the Patriots kind of turn things around, and the guy didn't even get much of an opportunity this year to prove himself. So I just feel bad because, even though he only played 1 year, I thought Juju did really well. I thought Juju was actually picking up the offense and playing great and was on his way to a 1,000-yard season, but then he had the concussion, missed some time, wasn't really as significant in his return. He dealt with another injury in the AFC title game against the Bengals, and then in the Super Bowl had a pretty good second half. And obviously, he's known for that guy who, was responsible for drawing the flag from Bradbury late in the game, which I know everyone hates outside of Kansas City, and I love it. Renee says, OMG, bring Lamb. He's great. Yeah, I mean, if you turn off the salary cap, it's doable. It's doable. But I think it's just people just playing fantasy football for fun. I don't think it's anything significant. What is going on in Pittsburgh? Houston's putting on a beating 17-0. How much time's left? Oh, it's almost halftime. Okay, well, Houston's looking good in the preseason. That's nice to see, I guess. Jerry Jones blowing smoke? Probably. That's the scary thing is, injuries will happen. That's why I don't really want to see much of the starters. I've said this before. Even if the Chiefs go 3-and-out, I don't need to see the offense anymore. It'd be nice to see them go out there and get a touchdown, especially with all the highlights we're seeing in training camp from Chiefs practices. But if you go 3-and-out, I can see Andy Reid wanting them to go back for one more drive. But me personally, I don't care. Okay, you go 3-and-out, you look like shit. Fine, just take an L and move on. It's a preseason. Who cares? That's my mindset, which doesn't mean anything because I'm not the head coach of the team, obviously. Let's see here. Thank you, Doug. Appreciate it. Vegas was fun. Went to visit Arrowhead West. I went to I got a tour of the stadium. It's actually a really nice stadium. The Chiefs definitely have some things to learn if they're going to build a new stadium. I took a picture in the locker room, and I said that the locker room still smells like champagne from Super Bowl 58. It's funny. 90% of Raiders fans were like livid about that. And then you had like a few weird Raiders fans flexing. They're like, well, at least we host Super Bowls. Oh, okay. That is a flex, boy. One guy tweeted and said, all the money they made is going to help the team. No, it's not. That's not how the salary cap works. But I wouldn't expect Raider Nation to know how things work in the NFL to begin with. They haven't even won a playoff game in 21 years. What do you know about winning to begin with? A college student, someone entering their college as a freshman, has never seen the Raiders win a playoff game. It's a fact. It's a damn fact. I mean, don't be mad at me. So you guys got a nice stadium. Don't be all upset about it. But I mean, for crying out loud, it's just. Here's a weird thing about the Raiders tour. So very early on, they obviously it's still a brand new stadium, so they kind of like to talk about how new it is and all the things they did to kind of prepare for the first game and then the first Super Bowl that they host. Obviously, they'll be hosting many more, and they're hopefully the Chiefs celebrating that locker room. I would be willing to bet the Chiefs win a second playoff game, which would be a Super Bowl in Allegiant Stadium before the Raiders even get a chance to play their first playoff game there. I'd be willing to bet that because it wouldn't surprise me if they go back anytime soon. But early on in the tour, they're showing a video of every stadium employee, not all the stadium employees, but the construction crew testing the toilets, and they're all flushing the toilets at once. Why do we need to see that? Who cares about testing the toilets? I don't know. I mean, it's cool to know, I guess, but who gives a flying fuck about testing the toilets? Like when they built the T-Mobile Center, which used to be called the Sprint Center, did anyone care about them testing the toilets? I don't know. That's just me, I guess. There were also a lot of things they didn't show in the tour. Like, they didn't show enough of the suites. They showed the owner's suite, but I also want to see the other suites. The media box, that's always a cool thing to see. The locker room part was actually pretty cool with the hologram. For those who had a tour, some of you guys even commented. You guys know what I'm talking about, but yeah. Like, who gives a shit about the fucking toilets of all things? Oh, what's up, Lego My Ego? I like that name. What are your thoughts on how Lovett did in camp? Listen, I'm not at camp. I'm not watching those practices, but I'm not really seeing much of his highlights either. So I guess that's going to be someone. You're talking about the defensive tackle, Fabian Lovett Sr. We'll have to see what he does in the preseason because I'm not at camp. Camp's kind of boring to me. I've been a couple of times. Some people love it, and that's fine. It's really nothing to me. I want to see the preseason games. I want to see what they do then. Not to say these practices are irrelevant, but if we're going to see Lovett, it's going to be probably in these preseason games too. So yeah, it'd be nice to put some depth on that defensive tackle spot because outside of Chris Jones and Mike Pennell, I'm not really too big of a fan. Derek Nottie, not bad against the run, but I think they can use a little bit more strength in the middle of that defensive line there. Want to see Mahomes is developing a good connection with the receivers? Yeah, that's a huge thing. I think that's everyone's number one thing to watch, Teresa. I think you speak for every single Chiefs fan when you want to see how is Mahomes going to do with all of these new guys. You have Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy, two really fast guys. Now you're going to be playing against someone that's not Spags defense. How is that speed going to carry over in that kind of a situation where you're going up against another defense? And how is that offense going to look? Are they going to be in sync? That's a very important thing to see for sure. Offseason is way too long. I'm still ready for the regular season to start. Well, if you're a Chiefs fan, it's not as long as the other off seasons in the NFL. Chiefs have had shorter off seasons. And I love how people outside of Kansas City are using that as like evidence or a reason as to why the Chiefs have a shorter offseason every year. Okay. Hasn't slowed them down recently. So why is it going to slow them down this year? The thing about three-peat, and I know some fans are going to say, one game out of 10. Okay. But I'm a fan. I'm not a player. I don't need to worry about that. But I'm watching, I think it's, I can't remember if it was First Take or Speak on FS1. But they were talking about, can the Chiefs three-peat? And I can't remember the name of the person. Someone said no. And their reason for saying no is it hasn't happened before. Okay, well, you know what? People love to say something's not going to happen because it's never happened or it hasn't happened in a long time. You know what we haven't seen in 19, 20 years? We did not see a team win the Super Bowl back-to-back years. Guess what? The Chiefs just did it. You know what else we haven't seen? We haven't seen a regular season MVP win the Super Bowl the same season. Guess what? Patrick Mahomes did it the 2022 season. So, for as much as fans want to say, oh, this has never happened before, it's never happened in 2 or 3 decades. Well, the Chiefs are the team that's going out there and making those things that haven't happened in a long time happen. So who's to say that they can't go out there and three-peat, especially when the offense is going to be much better this year than last year? And if people are going up, the only 2 reasons I've heard anybody say as to why the Chiefs will not three-peat is it's never happened before or injuries. So one of them, you're going off historical context, and the other one is, okay, injuries. And let's be honest, when people say injuries, a lot of them are non-Chiefs fans, and they're kind of hoping for that because they know that this team already looks better than last year. And if this defense can stay merely the same, I think they're going to take a tiny step back. I don't think it's going to be anything noticeable or significant. I think statistically, you'll notice a little bit of a dip there. But the offense is going to make they're going to make strides this year. They're going to improve. And that scares a lot of people. And that's why they're hoping for injuries. What are your thoughts on Mahomes making the decision to play preseason? Is it worth it? Yes. I've seen some people say that they never want Mahomes to ever play a preseason snap ever again. And I get the idea behind that. But you kind of need to. Listen, obviously you never want an injury to happen. But if an injury happens on the first snap of the game, it's like, shit, what do you do? It's kind of like with Aaron Rodgers. He played in the preseason, and then on the 4th snap of the Jets season on offense, he gets hurt. It's like, that could have easily been in the preseason. When something like that happens, maybe then that's when people start having the conversation, should starters not even play at all in the preseason? Obviously, in the 2020 season, we didn't have the preseason for obvious reasons. So I don't know. I think you have to, especially when you have two new receivers, and there's a lot of expectations from those two new receivers, and Hollywood Brown and Xavier Worthy. You gotta see a little bit of something between Mahomes and those two guys. So yeah, and that's why I keep saying I do not need more than drive, even if it's a 3 and out. Fine, like you sucked, you looked bad. Take the L. It's a preseason game. No one cares. And go the following week and get better and practice before that next preseason game. Yeah, I think Justin Reed's dealing with like a lower leg injury. I think a quad injury of some sort. I did see Jason Anderson of 810 say that he's expected to miss the entire preseason. Maybe some of that's just cautionary stuff there. I don't know. Gerard Mayo in New England is going to make some interesting cuts besides Juju. Yeah, I mean, that team is still a disaster. I mean, Belichick's drafts were abysmal the last couple of years there, but I don't know, man. I just don't know, like, what reason does anyone have to believe that New England's going to be great? I mean, if Drake May just shocks everyone and lives up to the hype that they were giving Trevor Lawrence, maybe, but I don't think anyone's expecting that. Yeah, I see some of you guys mentioning Juju. Yeah, Deb, I see your comment there. Here's my thing. Do I think the Chiefs are calling Juju right now? No. Do I think they could call him in the near future? Possibly. I think it would be after the preseason, and it would have to be a situation where there might be an injury bug going around. Other than that, I don't know if the Chiefs do bring back Juju. I'm not opposed to. I'll tell you right now, I would gladly take Juju over Sky Moore. As much as I want to give Kadarius Toney another opportunity, if there's an opportunity to bring back Juju and he's going to replace Kadarius Toney and you cut Toney, I would not be against that at all. I really wouldn't. Otherwise, if you can't make New England's roster, I'm a little concerned. I mean, maybe you could have used Juju last year when the offense was bad, but this year, like everyone knows, the offense is going to play better. Yeah, we're definitely going to see the starters, but I don't anticipate that to be more than one drive for the offense and the starting defense. What are your 3 takeaways from seeing the stadium? That's a really good question. I mean, I mentioned this earlier, but I'll say it again. I think if you're the Chiefs and if you are going to build a brand new stadium, and they've got to make a decision on that probably before the end of the calendar year, you got to learn from these other stadiums. I mean, I'm sure Clark Hunt has definitely like gotten into that because they spent a whole week using the Raiders practice facility and their stadium. They visit the Chargers also once a year. So, hopefully the Chiefs have done their due diligence, and I'm sure other owners are willing to let other owners to visit their stadium if they want to look around and try to learn. I mean, it's completely normal. You're not necessarily competing for the best stadium in the world. So I'm sure teams would allow other owners to look around and maybe learn and take notes and whatnot. I'm sure that's already been done. But I don't know. It's just the Chiefs definitely need to learn from that, because the rendering I saw from the state of Kansas, it did kind of look like Allegiant Stadium. Kind of did. Which isn't a bad thing. I mean, it's a nice stadium for sure. As far as other takeaways from that stadium, Raiders employees are actually pretty damn nice. Surprisingly. Here's another takeaway. Raiders fans who are like, keyboard warriors on the internet, I'm telling you right now, Raiders fans are the most harmless people in person. They're like the softest people in the world, like almost like a teddy bear. Raiders fans, listen, I went to Allegiant Stadium last year and I was sitting on the Raiders side because I wanted to be able to look at the Chiefs sideline, which, you know, kind of was boring anyway to begin with. But I was surrounded by more Raiders fans than Chiefs fans, and they were very, very harmless. So they're not as scary as they want to come off on the internet. Those are my takeaways, Doug. If you talk a lot of shit and haven't won a Super Bowl since 1983, you might be a Raiders fan. Yeah, that might be true. We don't care about hosting a Super Bowl. We care about winning the Super Bowl. Yeah, like, listen, hosting the Super Bowl is great. You should be proud of that. You should be happy about that. But if anyone's using that as a flex, that's pretty stupid. Like, do you think anyone is flexing on the Patriots that the Patriots don't host Super Bowls back during their 18-year run with Tom Brady? No, they won 6 Super Bowls. The Chiefs have won 3 in 5 years. It's already the best 5-year stretch in NFL history. The most wins, playoffs included, of any team in a 5-year span. But Farzine, they've added games. Yeah, that's the way it kind of works, folks. And they're going to add an 18th game soon. So all of these single season records you've seen in years past, they're going to all get shattered because they have 17 games now and soon to be 18. So get ready for it. And by the way, all the teams that played during the 16 game format, they were breaking records that were previously held back when they had fewer games. So yeah, I mean, that's the way it all works out. Testing the toilets is something they do in all stadiums, arenas, to be sure the system can handle flushings at once. I get that, but it's like, who cares? Philip says, I care. I have to take a shit right now. Better flush first for safety. Wasn't like the first event at Allegiant Stadium, WWE SummerSlam or something? And I think there was a rumor that there was like an issue with the toilets. So I don't know. But hey, I mean, the more you know, right? In the Patrick Mahomes era, the Chiefs have played in the 4 Super Bowls and received 24. Yes, this is correct. I actually have it written down. So let me pull it up, Matthew, because you are correct. I know this has been talked about recently. So in the 4 Super Bowls that have supposedly been rigged in Kansas City's favor, the Chiefs have been penalized 24 times. The 49ers twice. The Buccaneers and the Eagles have been penalized 21 times. The Chiefs have 213 penalty yards, and the other 3 teams in those 4 Super Bowls, 157 yards. So yeah, speaking of toilets, there's a big dump on the narrative that the Chiefs are getting help from the refs. You already issued your prophecy about 3-peat. It means it's going to materialize because your predictions come true. That is a fact right there. Elena gets it. Riding shotgun almost home. Oh, you're listening from your car, I assume? No, well, thank you. You could be listening to music radio or Sirius XM, but I appreciate you, Philip. Yeah, I think the Chiefs are going to 3-peat. And here's the thing, like, Stephon Diggs going from the Bills to the Texans, I think the Texans got better, but, you know, did the Bengals get better? You still have an offensive line to worry about there with or without Joe Burrow. The Bills, I think, are going to take a step back. The Dolphins, yeah, they've got this high-powered offense, but they can't beat teams with a winning record. The only team they beat last year with a winning record was Dallas. The Ravens, okay, the Ravens might be like the best regular season team than the past couple of years, but they have nothing to show for it in the playoffs. I think Kansas City's biggest threat in this conference is Houston, and then behind them is Baltimore, and then Cincinnati after that. And then Miami and Buffalo are right behind those 2 teams. Tony on punt returns or McCall Hardman? I mean, I really want to say Kadarius Toney because he did some good things. Obviously, we know in the Super Bowl he had the longest punt return in Super Bowl history, but and I know McCall obviously got the game winner last year, but man, McCall has just been so slow with his progress in the NFL for a guy that has the skill set that he has. Same thing with Kadarius Toney. I know Kadarius Toney's been dealing with a lot of injuries. McCall's been dealing with some of that as well, but even before those injuries, it's just taken him some time to live up to that hype. But the Chiefs don't want to give up on those two guys. That's why they brought both of them back, because they feel like, if they can get it together, they're going to be dangerous. And these are guys that are not expected to be starters on your team right now. Only if you have injuries. Hopefully it does not happen. So if these are depth players and they make the team, it's going to be a very good year for your offense. I mean, Kadarius Toney and Mecole Hardman as depth players, that's kind of a scary thought for opposing defenses, because that's just your depth guys. Your starter, Rashee Rice, went off in the playoffs. Hollywood Brown, I mean, this is going to be his best year that he's ever had. Xavier Worthy, I'm excited to see that guy. So, yeah, I've never been to SoFi. I do want to go to SoFi. It does look like a really nice stadium, and they've invested a lot into that one. Yeah, and I know, Layla, a lot of people have this pushback about, if you have a dome for the new Chief Stadium, then you lose the flyover. And I don't disagree. Like, whenever I go to Chiefs games, I always make it a point to go early, because I want to hear the national anthem, home of the Chiefs, and then see the flyover go along with it. Like, that's a big part of the Arrowhead experience. And if you show up late, like right after the kickoff, well, you kind of miss like one of the biggest parts about attending games at Arrowhead. And then on top of that, you can start hosting Super Bowls. You can host Final Fours. You can host big name concerts. You can host other events, WrestleManias, those kinds of things. So they have an opportunity to do that kind of thing. I always heard opposing fans never wanted to be in the upper deck for safety reasons. I mean, that's where I sat, front row. See, I always like sitting in the upper deck anyway, because you can see a lot of the field better. I'm not saying you can't see that, in the first level, but you can see it. It's a much better angle, almost like the all 22 in the second level. So I've always liked upper deck seats. Only bad side is when you're trying to go back to your car, you're one of the last people to get in the car and leave. And we all know the Arrowhead traffic is quite a crazy one before and after games. It's always cold in Missouri and Kansas in February, unless you have some good restaurants and things around the stadium. I don't see KC, Kansas hosting a Super Bowl unless it has a dome. Yeah, it has to be a dome. And someone was mentioning the other day about East Rutherford, New Jersey hosted a Super Bowl. Yeah, 10 years ago, that was an experiment, and that ship sailed real fast. They wanted to give it an opportunity, and it was just a disaster. Yeah, I mean, they've been to Minnesota, which is cold as hell in February, but the stadium's indoors, and that's all that matters. And I'm sure the NFL and the city work really hard to clear the streets in case there is any heavy snow that comes the day of the Super Bowl. The arguments are situational penalties in key moments of the game. I still hate the Eagles game penalty and think that Butker could have nailed a long field goal, but it's history now. Listen, first of all, that was a penalty, and I'm not saying you're not saying that, but here's the other thing too. Welcome to the NFL. I've always said, like, I don't ever complain about officiating, because officiating, every single team deals with bad officiating. It doesn't matter if you're the best team in the NFL or the worst team in the NFL. Every team deals with shitty officials. It's not an easy job. Belichick said this many times. He'll lash out at the refs, and then in the press conference, when he gets asked about it, he always says that, they've got a difficult job. And as funny as it is here coming from Bill, he's right. It is a very difficult job. Whenever, the Chiefs drive ends in a touchdown or a field goal or a turnover or a punt, what do Mahomes, Kelsey, and all those other guys do? They go on the sidelines and they sit down. What do the refs do? They don't get to go sit down. They're still on the field the entire game. It's even harder in a sport like baseball, where it's really, really hot in the summertime in some places. Man, those umpires, I don't know why they want to be an umpire. Excuse me, because in the summertime, especially in places like Kansas City, Houston, some other places where it's hot, you're dealing with the elements of the outdoors and the humidity, and it is not fun. And you're there for all night. That's why whenever you see a blowout in a baseball game in like the 7th or 8th inning, the umps will just call strike almost all the time. And I think Eric Hosmer was once pissed about that and got tossed because he wasn't happy. He still wanted the game to be called right, which I don't blame, but it's hot, man. But yeah, you're right, Rochelle. But going to comment, I hope I said your name right. Listen, in that game, you know what's funny to me is Juju was getting held all game long, and then they called that holding penalty in the end there. So yeah, I mean, it's funny to me because I remember in the New York Jets game last year on Sunday Night Football, the Jets got away with some favorable penalties or missed calls. And it's funny because Robert Saleh was laughing on the sidelines every time the Jets got away with something. And then when they call a BS holding on Sauce Gardner, which it was a BS call, I mean, he's livid and he's lashing out at the refs. Well, it's like, shit, man, you got away with some stuff in that game. Deal with it. There was a safety called on the Chiefs that should not have been called a safety. There was a horse collar penalty that should have been called, and it wasn't on the Jets. So fucking deal with it, man. Just because it happened at the worst time doesn't mean all the penalties that happened before were irrelevant. Those are still important parts of the game too. I love how people say, oh, it's the end of the game, those penalties. Okay, well, what about the first? People do this all the time. I was listening to Greg Olson when he was making that on the broadcast, making a big deal. He's like, oh, I don't know, Kevin, you can't make that call late in the game in a big stage like that. Why not? It's a penalty. It doesn't matter if it's the last minute of the game or the first minute of the game. If something is a penalty, then a flag needs to be thrown. People did this with Caitlin Clark in the Final Four. I can't remember who Iowa was playing, but whoever their opponent was committed a charging penalty, and everyone's going, oh, you can't call that in a big moment late in the game. Why not? Doesn't matter if it's the last 10 seconds or the first 10 seconds. If something is a foul or a penalty, it needs to be called. That's always the stance I've had. But people only want to make a big deal about penalties that happen at the end of games. Why? Are the first 55 minutes of a game not important as the last 5? I mean, you have 60 minutes for a reason. If only the last 5 minutes were important, then why do we play 60 minutes of football plus possibly overtime? We might as well just put the clock at 5 minutes. Whoever wins a coin toss possibly wins the game. See how silly that sounds? Just as silly as worrying about things that only happen at the end of a game. I get it. I mean, those are when big moments happen. But to say that a penalty matters more at the end of a game than the beginning of the game, I think is silly. Those all add up. 100%. The Texans are leading right now. Yeah, I did see that. It was 17-0, but I turned off my phone. I don't really care anymore because I'm talking to you guys. I don't understand hosting a Super Bowl when it comes to a new stadium. Us normal fans can't afford to go to a Super Bowl, so why worry about building for it? Build for fan experience. I think, you know, at the end of the day, as a fan, you still want your team in your city to host the Super Bowl because that would be pretty cool. I know Arrowhead was promised a Super Bowl if they had the retractable roof, but the Jackson County voters went against it. So, you know, it's definitely. I remember Clark Hunt mentioned this back then. Obviously, the Google search engine is completely different today than it was 20 years ago, 15 years ago. But he mentioned he was making a big deal about how if you Google Detroit and Super Bowl, you get so many things about businesses and restaurants and all these hotel accommodations because you have a lot of visitors. So it's definitely an opportunity that let me just say this. Obviously, we don't know what's going to happen with the Chiefs Stadium, but the expected place, if they move to Kansas, is going to be close to the Legends area. Well, what do you have close to the Legends area? You have Great Wolf Lodge. If the Chiefs do build a new stadium near Great Wolf Lodge, I guarantee you Great Wolf Lodge is going to see business go up during football season because it's going to be so close to the stadium. And obviously they're going to jack up the rates because why wouldn't you? You have to do that. All the businesses in the Legends area, they're definitely going to experience a more volume of people because of potential visitors that weekend. So, you know, that's a big deal too with the Super Bowl as well. I know even though Vegas is super expensive and you heard even the players complaining about prices for suites and all of that. Vegas had a home run with hosting the Super Bowl this year. And the best part, the Chiefs were the team that won that game. They were the ones who won. Sky Moore, depth and speed. If it doesn't happen this year, they all got. Yeah, I get what you're saying, Doug. But we haven't. Well, like, what skill set does Sky Moore have that? Like, I remember when he was drafted, everyone was excited. It's like, yeah, any wide receiver you draft, people are going to get excited about it because they get to work with Patrick Mahomes. I mean, his progression for sure has been slow. I do agree with you on that front, Doug. Offense appears to be awesome. What's your take on the defense? Paul is asking. I think the defense will take a little bit of a step back, but just a little bit. I don't think, like, statistically, if you pay very close attention to the stats, I think you'll see the Chiefs defense take a bit of a dip there. But in general, I don't think it's going to be much different. And on top of that, your offense is going to return the favor. And what I mean by that is, the Chiefs offense last year, they didn't do their defense any favors when they went out there, committed turnovers, dropped passes, and that led to shorter drives on offense. That meant the defense had to play more snaps than the offense in some games last year. Now that the offense is going to be better, that's a huge boost for your defense. No defense wants to spend a lot of time on the field. That's not a good thing. And I know a lot of people push back on this and they say, well, the opposing offense and the opposing defense, they play the same amount of minutes. Yes, but the longer an offense has the ball, that really hurts a defense. So, for example, if let's say the Ravens and the Chiefs, if the Ravens have the ball for 8-9 minutes, that's going to hurt the Chiefs defense. And if the Chiefs offense goes 3 and out to start a game, then your defense has to come right back out. I was listening to Charvarius Ward. He was doing an interview on Kay Adams' show, and Kay Adams brought up the coin toss and how San Francisco chose to receive the opening kickoff, which was weird given the overtime rules. Charvarius Ward did defend that, and he mentioned, so if you guys remember at the end of regulation in the Super Bowl, the Chiefs had a phenomenal drive, and they basically had San Francisco's number on that drive, and San Francisco's defense could not keep up. And Charvarius Ward mentioned that the defense was kind of gassed out, and that's a big reason why Kyle Shanahan decided to receive the ball to give the defense a break. It's also funny because Shanahan also wanted the ball third, as if that ever happened. I can actually see the logic behind that, because not that it mattered, because Mahomes and the Chiefs, they got the ball second and they still ripped apart that San Francisco defense when they got the ball second. But here's my thing. If you're going to say your defense was tired and that you wanted to stay on the sidelines a little longer, it's just one more drive left in the season. Could you not give everything you have in that game, especially when things were going San Francisco's way a majority of the game? You could not give one more drive for the season with the Super Bowl on the line? Again, with the overtime rules, you got to kick the ball, and for whatever reason they didn't. It's funny because Drew Tranquil did an interview, and I was surprised he actually revealed this. Drew Tranquil did an interview saying that if the 49ers got a touchdown first and kicked the field goal, the PAT, the Chiefs were going to go for 2. They had that all mapped out. Now, obviously, they did not need to go for 2 because the 49ers kicked the field goal and Brock Purdy choked in moment when there was a wide open receiver. So the 49ers just did not have everything mapped out. The Chiefs did. That's why there's a big difference between Andy Reid and Kyle Shanahan. And I know it took Andy Reid a very long time to get his first ring, but he's got 3 of them now. Shanahan, on the other hand, has choked 3 rings away with the Falcons and then twice with the 49ers. And listen, I think Shanahan will lead the 49ers to a win one day, but dude, you gotta freaking hold on to those leads. That was a big issue with Andy Reid in Kansas City. Blew a big lead against Indianapolis, the first playoff game with Andy Reid. Blew a big lead against the Titans. Blew a big lead against Cincinnati. Now, in the Cincinnati game, you had already won the Super Bowl once at the time with Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes, but that was still a devastating loss. Like, you can't afford to make those kinds of mistakes. Those things are easier to kind of accept now because you've won 3 times, but that's what Shanahan is kind of going through right now. Yeah, retractable roof. I've mentioned this before too. It's like, the that would probably cost a lot more too. But you do keep the opportunity to have that Arrowhead experience where you have the flyover. Listen, if you're going to build a new stadium, something's got to go. Something's going to change. If you go to the new Arrowhead, you might say, well, this is a pretty cool new feature, but I miss having the flyover. Like something's going to have to be sacrificed. Unfortunately, that's a big part of Arrowhead. So I don't know. That's pretty cool. You got Matt Ariza's autograph. That's awesome. Yeah, I'm excited for Matt Ariza. Like, I'm excited for the punter. See what he's going to do with that cannon of a leg he's got. Penalty is a penalty regardless when. I agree. Yeah, 100%. Thanks, Elena. The Arrowhead experience atmosphere would be missed with a dome. Yeah. See, that's what I was just saying. It's kind of like the NFL draft when it was in Kansas City. The stage for the draft covered Union Station, which is a very important and significant part of Kansas City, but something had to go. And unfortunately, the look of Union Station was covered for the draft. Still a very successful draft, but one of your monumental buildings there was covered up. That's kind of the way things work. New stadium, higher ticket prices. Yep. Especially if the team keeps winning at the rate. Listen, a lot can happen in 7 years. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean, we'd like to think Mahomes and the Chiefs are still going to be kicking ass and all that good stuff, but so many things can happen 7 years from now. But if they're still playing at a very high level, then yeah, I think it's going to be, you're going to see a lot of expensive seats there. Don't forget, Margaritaville will be open by then too. Oh, okay. I did not know there was a Margaritaville in that area. Good to know. You learn something new every day. All right, appreciate you, Doug. Yeah, we're gonna wrap up soon anyway. So, because it seems like I'm catching up on the comments. What do I think of the kickoff rule? Deb's asking. Here's my thing. Why are you changing rules so much? Why? What was wrong with the kickoff rules you had last year? Or even like 10 years ago where you had 5 guys up front, 4 in the middle, and then 2 in the back. What was wrong with that? What was wrong with that formation? Now you have something weird where it's like you have 3 of your guys in the back area, and then the rest are up front. It's just weird. I don't like it. I don't understand why the NFL has to. Do they just want to say, "Hey, we have a new rule"? Do they just want to say that every year? I don't get it. I'm not sure. I just don't understand the NFL's logic with that thing sometimes. What was wrong with the kickoff rule originally? And by the way, please do not say player safety. Bullshit. If you cared so much about player safety, then you would not be adding games. As a fan, I love seeing more games. But don't give me this bullshit of player safety and then tell us that you're going to add more games and make the seasons longer. Doesn't make any sense. Yeah, it's weird. Because the kickoff, like the most exciting play in football is a kick return touchdown or a punt return touchdown. And the whole kickoff, like people have been even speculating, is the kickoff going to go away? Because people really do believe that with all of these strict changes, the rules that you're trying to apply, people think that the kickoff will eventually be eliminated, which I would not want at all. Especially like if you're a Kansas City fan, what you've seen with Tamarick Vanover, Dante Hall, Tyreek Hill at the kick return position, like that was a big part of the Chiefs in the 90s and early 2000s with what they did in the kick return game. And if you take that away, it's like, man, you're not going to see a Dante Hall ever again. You're not going to see a Devin Hester ever again because, and I mean, you see kind of less of that today because you see a lot more touchbacks. I think I saw last week's game, Joe Buck and Troy Aikman mentioned there were more touchbacks last year than any year in NFL history. It's like, well, shit, you're taking away the most exciting play in football, which is a kick return touchdown. I know it's easy to look up, but I'm not going to do it now. I don't know how many kick return touchdowns you had last year. Actually, fuck it. Why not? We're almost done. Might as well do it. How many kick return touchdowns in 2023? Okay, it comes up pretty quickly. Let's look. Kick return touchdowns in 2023. You had 4. Marvin Mims had 1. That was in the game when I remember that. That was when the Broncos allowed 70 or whatever it was. Andrew Beck had 1, Damian Pierce, and Jalen Reagor. That's it. Those are only 4 kick returners that had a touchdown last year. Dante Hall would usually have like 2 or 3 a year just from kick returns. So I don't know, man. It's so weird. Better do it now. Browning for later. Browning for later. What does that mean? Jake Browning for later? I don't know what that means, Sam. Change of stadium may lead to change of Arrowhead logo, maybe. No. Listen, I'll say this right now, because last year Clark Hunt was asked about alternate uniforms, because that's kind of a popular thing with some NFL teams. And Clark Hunt said he's against that because he loved the traditional red and white jerseys that they have. Clark Hunt is like a very, tradition is a huge deal to him. He doesn't want to change the name of the team, even though there's been a little bit of pushback on that. He doesn't want to change any of the colors. He doesn't want to change the logo. He loves the Arrowhead tradition and what it's been over the years. So that's not going to change. I don't think so, Matthew. I'd be very surprised. More money for the owners to pay for these huge salaries. Yeah. You see the salary cap going up every year. Yeah, that's the thing. It's just you're taking away a very exciting play in the sport. Because before all these crazy rule changes, even after Dante Hall and Tyreek Hill, you saw Dave Toub, or even before Tyreek Hill, I should say, Dave Toub, you saw so many different returners score a touchdown. McCole Hardman, Quentin Demps, Niall Davis. You've seen so many different returners, both on kick returns and punt returns, score touchdowns for the Chiefs. Tyreek Hill did it for a little bit, but then they wanted to make him focus more on offense. So Dexter McCluster, no, that was before Dave Toub got here, but actually, no, I take that back. McCluster did score a touchdown under Dave Toub on special teams. So yeah, you've had so many guys thrive as kick return and punt returners. And now you're just taking the kick return game away, which is just crazy. So I hate it. I don't like it at all. All right, guys, I'm going to go ahead and wrap things up here. This is a fun. We have not had a Red Friday live chat as lively as this in quite some time. So thank you, guys. The football season's back. That's how you know football season's back. Quick reminder, tomorrow, the Chiefs play at 6 o'clock Central Time. So 5 o'clock Central Time, we will do our first pregame live chat of the 2024 season. Yes, football season's back. When I'm making announcements like that, that's when you know football season's back. So an hour before kickoff, 5 o'clock, we will do a pregame live chat. At halftime, we will do a halftime live stream. Going to be very short, obviously. And then after the game, we will do the Chiefs Zone podcast. It will be our post-game live stream. And I'll have the link for you guys to call in. So you guys will be able to call into the podcast after the game. After the podcast. After the game, during the podcast, you guys can call in, chat it up. And I look forward to talking to you guys then. Hey, we've had a lot of new people this offseason, so I appreciate all the new people. We've had some familiar faces as well on these live streams, so I appreciate you guys coming back as well. I'm very excited to get this 2024 season underway. We are less than 22 hours away from kickoff. We're getting closer and closer, so I'll talk to you guys tomorrow. One last sleep. Let's enjoy it. Talk to you all tomorrow. Peace out. Take care.